All right, so today we are going deep with Happier by Tal Ben-Shahar.
Yeah, this one's going to be a fun one.
I know, right? Positive psychology.
Straight from Harvard.
Like, yeah, this isn't just like some fluffy self-help stuff.
Exactly. This is legit research.
Yeah, Ben-Shahar is like a leading expert in this field.
And he's got some super interesting ideas about how we can actually, build happier lives.
Yeah, and he even has these happiness archetypes that we'll get into.
Oh, yeah, those are fascinating.
Like, which one are you?
We'll find out.
Okay, so before we get too deep into that, what's the big takeaway here? What's Ben-Shahar's core message when it comes to happiness?
Well, he's really challenging that traditional idea of happiness being some distant destination, you know?
Yeah, like, I'll be happy when.
Exactly. Like when I get that promotion or when I find the perfect partner or whatever.
Or when I finally clean my closet.
Right. But Ben-Shahar's saying it's not about reaching some finish line.
Okay, so then what is it about?
It's about finding balance in our lives, like a sustainable kind of happiness.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So imagine a seesaw.
Right. Okay, I'm picturing it.
He says we need both pleasure and meaning to make that seesaw work.
Oh, interesting analogy.
Yeah, so on one side, we've got pleasure.
Right, those immediate joys.
Those good vibes, like that first sip of coffee in the morning.
Oh, yes.
Or like a good laugh with friends, you know?
Yeah, those little moments that just make you feel good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But those are fleeting, right?
Yeah, they don't last forever.
So if we're only chasing those quick hits of happiness, the other side of the seesaw, meaning stay stuck on the ground.
Okay, so it can't just be about, chasing fleeting pleasures.
Right. We need that deeper sense of purpose, too.
So it's about doing things that feel worthwhile.
You got it. Things that align with our values.
Feeling connected to something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. It's about living authentically, in a way that feels true to who we are.
I like that. Living authentic.
So sustainable happiness, then, is about finding that sweet spot.
Where we're enjoying the ride and feeling like our journey has purpose.
You nailed it.
Have you ever, felt yourself tilting too far to one side of that seesaw? I know I have.
Oh, absolutely. And Ben-Shahar has this really insightful framework for understanding those different approaches to happiness.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned this earlier, the happiness archetypes.
Yeah. So let's dive into those, shall we?
Yes, let's do it. Who do we have first?
Well, first up is the rat racer. Always on the go, always striving for that next goal.
I think we all know a rat racer.
Right. Always working, always pushing, but never really stopping to, smell the roses.
That's a powerful image. Do they ever actually feel happy?
That's the thing. They might achieve a lot.
They'll be super successful.
Yeah, but they're often sacrificing their present happiness for those future rewards.
And they could totally burn themselves out in the process.
Exactly. So it's all about finding that balance.
Okay, so then on the other end of the spectrum, is that where the hedonist comes in?
You got it. The hedonist is all about pleasure.
Living in the moment.
Indulging in those feel-good experiences.
That sounds fun, in moderation, right?
Mm-hmm.
But is there a downside?
Well, the thing is, that constant pursuit of pleasure can actually lead to a lack of meaning and purpose.
So they might be having a blast in the short term.
Right. But it can lead to feeling empty or lost in the long run.
So even too much of a good thing can be, not so good.
Exactly. It's all about balance again.
Okay, so who's our next contestant in this happiness game show?
Next up is the nihilist, and this one's a bit heavier.
Ooh, okay, I'm listening.
The nihilist has kind of given up on finding happiness.
Whoa, that's heavy. What could lead someone to that point?
Well, it could be past hurts, disappointments,
Yeah, life can be tough.
Or maybe they just feel like nothing really matters, in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I could see how that would lead to a sense of hopelessness.
Yeah, it's tough.
But hopefully they can find their way back to a more hopeful outlook.
I hope so, too.
Okay, I'm ready for a happier archetype now. Who's our final contender?
Drum roll, please. It's the happy person.
Haha, finally, someone who's figured it all out. What's their secret?
Well, it's not really a secret formula or anything.
Okay, so what is it then?
They've just figured out how to balance enjoying the moment while also pursuing goals that align with their values.
So they're not just bouncing between fleeting pleasures or
Right.
grinding away towards some distant goal.
Exactly. They found that sweet spot.
They're living intentionally.
And they're appreciating the journey while keeping their eyes on the horizon.
So they're probably pretty good at bouncing back from challenges too, right?
You bet. They understand that setbacks are a part of life.
Yeah, nobody escapes those.
And they've developed resilience and self-compassion.
Those seem like pretty essential skills for everyone, honestly.
Oh, absolutely. Resilience is that inner strength.
That helps us get back up when we fall down.
Exactly. It's like a muscle that gets stronger the more we use it.
So the more challenges we face, the more resilient we become.
Yeah, it's about developing that mental and emotional toughness to handle those curveballs.
And what about self-compassion? What does that look like in practice?
Self-compassion is like that inner cheerleader, that supportive friend we need during those tough times.
So instead of beating ourselves up when we make a mistake,
Yeah, we can offer ourselves kindness and understanding.
treat ourselves the way we would treat a good friend.
Exactly. We're all human. We all mess up sometimes.
It's about being kind to ourselves even when we don't feel like we deserve it.
Yeah, and you know what? Self-compassion actually helps us build resilience, too.
Oh, interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah, it gives us that space to learn from our mistakes and move forward without getting bogged down in self-criticism.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all of these pieces fit together. The balancing act of pleasure and meaning, the importance of resilience and self-compassion.
It's like building a toolkit for a happier life.
I like that, a happiness toolkit.
Yeah.
But, like, how do we actually use these tools? I'm ready for some practical strategies.
Well, luckily Ben-Shahar has a bunch of those, too.
Awesome. Let's hear them.
One of the most powerful practices he talks about is gratitude.
Okay, gratitude. Does that mean I need to start a gratitude journal?
A journal can be helpful,
Yeah, I've heard of those.
but it's not the only way to practice gratitude.
So what's the key here?
It's about regularly taking time to appreciate the good things in your life,
Even the small stuff.
especially the small stuff.
Like what? Give me an example.
Well, it could be anything really, like the warmth of the sun on your face, or a delicious meal,
I can get on board with that one.
or even just like a good hair day, you know?
Yeah, those little things can definitely make a difference.
The point is to shift our focus from what we lack to what we already have.
To appreciate the abundance that's already present in our lives.
You got it.
But, like, how does gratitude actually work? Does it really rewire our brains or something?
Think of it this way. Every time you express gratitude,
You're basically training your brain,
to focus on the positive.
like building a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
Exactly. And research has actually shown that this shift in perspective can have a huge impact on our overall well-being.
So by intentionally focusing on the good things,
We're actually making ourselves happier.
that's amazing. So I should be, like, actively looking for things to be grateful for.
Exactly. And the more you practice,
The more those positive thoughts and feelings become a natural part of who you are.
yeah, it's like rewiring your brain for happiness.
Okay, I'm convinced. Practice gratitude is going on my to-do list today.
Great.
But wait, what other strategies does Ben-Shahar suggest? I need more tools for my happiness toolkit.
Well, he talks a lot about goal setting.
Okay, yeah, goal setting. That's like a classic self-improvement topic.
But it's not just about setting any old goal.
So it's not just about, like, writing down a bunch of stuff we want to achieve.
Right, it's got to be more than that.
What's the key then?
It's about setting goals that are aligned with our values.
So our goals should actually reflect what's important to us?
Yeah, like what do you actually care about?
So if my goal is to, like, climb Mount Everest,
Okay.
but I actually value, like, spending time with my family,
Right.
those two things might be in conflict.
Exactly. So how does climbing Mount Everest actually bring you closer to what you value?
Yeah, that's a good point. It might not.
And if your goals aren't aligned with your values,
Then you're probably not going to be very motivated to achieve them.
and even if you do achieve them,
You might not actually feel that sense of fulfillment.
exactly. It's like, what's the point?
So how do we make sure our goals are actually aligned with our values?
Well, first you got to figure out what your values actually are.
Yeah, that's probably a good place to start.
Like, what's important to you?
What do you stand for?
What do you want your life to be about?
Once you have a clear sense of your values.
Then you can start setting goals that are in line with those values.
Okay, that makes sense. But it's not like we set a goal and then never think about it again, right?
Yeah. Right. Ben-Shahar talks about the importance of regularly reflecting on our goals.
Okay, so it's not just a set it and forget it kind of thing.
Nope. Life is constantly changing.
Yeah, things happen.
And we're constantly evolving, too.
So we might set a goal that feels right at one point in our lives.
But then, like, a year later, or even 6 months later,
It might not be the right goal anymore.
yeah, we can get so caught up in chasing certain milestones that we forget to ask ourselves if they're even the right milestones anymore.
It's like we're on autopilot, just going through the motions,
So it's important to check in with ourselves regularly.
like a goal checkup.
Exactly. Like, hey, self, are we still on the same page? Are these goals still lighting you up?
I like that. Were these goals still lighting you up? That's a good question to ask ourselves.
Ben-Shahar suggests setting aside some time each week or even just once a month to reflect on your goals.
Okay, so just a little bit of time for reflection can make a big difference.
Yeah, ask yourself, like, are these goals still inspiring me? Are they bringing me closer to my values? Do they still feel meaningful?
I think it's so easy to get stuck in that rut of chasing goals out of habit.
Even if they're not really serving us anymore.
Yeah, we can get so focused on the destination that we forget to enjoy the journey.
And this idea of regular reflection is a good way to make sure we're still on the right path.
It's like taking a step back and reassessing
Making sure our goals are actually contributing to our happiness.
instead of just adding to our stress level.
Exactly. Speaking of stress,
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Ben-Shahar also talks about the power of mindfulness.
Okay, mindfulness, that's a word I hear a lot these days.
It's become pretty popular.
But I'll be honest, I'm not always sure what it actually means.
Well, mindfulness is all about being present in the moment, fully experiencing whatever's happening without judgment.
Hmm. So it's about quieting those racing thoughts.
Yeah, like hitting the pause button on that constant mental chatter.
The one that's always replaying the past or worrying about the future.
Exactly. It's about being right here, right now.
But how do we actually do that? Do we need to, like, sit on a meditation cushion for hours every day?
It doesn't have to be that complicated.
Okay.
You can start small.
Like how small?
Well, you could try simply paying attention to your breath for a few minutes each day.
Just focusing on my breath.
Yeah, just noticing the sensation of each inhale and exhale.
Okay, that sounds doable.
Or you could try a mindful walking meditation.
What's that?
It's basically walking while paying attention to the sensations of your feet on the ground.
So it's about bringing that same level of awareness to everyday activities.
Exactly. Like really savoring that first bite of food.
Or noticing the warmth of the sun on your skin
Yeah, it's about waking up to the richness of the present moment.
instead of always being lost in our thoughts.
It's a practice, though.
So it takes time,
It's not always easy to quiet those thoughts.
I can imagine.
But the more you practice, the easier it becomes.
I think the challenge for a lot of people is like that inner critic.
You know, that voice that tells us we're not doing it right or that we're not good enough.
Yeah, I know that voice all too well.
That's where self-compassion comes in.
Ah, so self-compassion can help us with mindfulness.
Exactly. Mindfulness helps us become more aware of our thoughts and feelings without judgment.
So we can observe those thoughts without getting caught up in them.
And that allows us to cultivate a more compassionate and understanding attitude towards ourselves.
So instead of beating ourselves up for having those thoughts,
We can simply acknowledge them and let them go.
treat ourselves with the same kindness we would offer a good friend.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all perfectly imperfect human beings doing the best we can.
And that's more than enough.
Yeah, it really is.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all of these concepts work together.
They're all interconnected.
Gratitude, goal setting, mindfulness, self-compassion.
It's like building a toolkit for happiness.
I like that. A happiness toolkit.
And remember, it's not about being perfect.
So if I, forget to practice gratitude one day, or my meditation practice gets derailed,
It happens.
it's not the end of the world.
Not at all. It's about progress, not perfection.
So it's about being kind to ourselves.
Recognizing that we're all works in progress.
I think that's a really important message, especially for anyone who's feeling overwhelmed by the idea of, overhauling their entire life.
You don't have to do everything at once.
You can start small
pick one thing that resonates with you.
and build from there.
Absolutely. And the beauty of these practices is that they can be adapted to fit your individual needs and lifestyle.
So there's no one-size-fits-all approach to happiness.
Nope. What works for one person might not work for another.
It's about finding what works for you.
Exactly. So if someone is listening to this and they're like, okay, I'm ready to embark on this happiness journey.
Yeah, where do they even begin?
Well, I think the most important step is simply making the decision to prioritize your own happiness.
That's it. Just decide to be happy.
It sounds simple, but it's a really powerful first step.
It's like giving ourselves permission to be happy.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that your well-being matters.
You deserve to live a fulfilling life.
And once you've made that commitment,
Then you can start exploring the practices we've discussed.
see what resonates with you,
Maybe it's starting a gratitude journal
or setting aside time for mindfulness.
or revisiting your goals to make sure they're still aligned with your values.
Yeah, and it's okay to start small.
Even 5 minutes of gratitude journaling,
Or a short mindful breathing exercise.
those can make a difference.
Absolutely. Small, consistent actions over time create lasting change.
That's encouraging.
It's not about making these grand
Think about
gestures,
those little everyday actions.
weaving these practices into the fabric of your life.
And I bet as you start to incorporate these practices,
You might be surprised by the ripple effects they have on other areas of your life.
oh yeah, like what?
Well, your relationships might improve.
Okay.
You might feel more energized and productive at work.
Uh-huh.
You might even find that you're more resilient in the face of challenges.
So it's not just about our own personal happiness.
It's about creating a positive ripple effect that spreads outwards.
So by taking care of ourselves,
We're actually taking care of those around us, too.
happiness is contagious.
That's a great way to put it. And as we wrap up this deep dive into happier,
Yeah, I'm feeling happier already.
I'm left with one final thought-provoking question for our listeners. If you could, wave a magic wand and just be one of those happiness archetypes right now, which one would you pick? And maybe more importantly, what's one tiny thing you could do, like today, to move a little closer to that happy person way of being?
Ooh, that's a good one to sit with. I think we should all take some time to reflect on that. See which archetype we identify with most. And then, yeah, what one little step can we take today to bring a little more of that happy person energy into our lives?
Exactly. It's not about some huge transformation or anything, just those little consistent steps.
Like we've been talking about, those tiny tweaks, they can make a big difference over time.
Yeah, it's all about progress, not perfection.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive into happier. It's been a real pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
Likewise, I always love a good conversation about happiness.
Me too. And I hope our listeners have found this conversation as insightful and inspiring as I have.
Me too. Remember, happiness is contagious, so spread the joy, tell your friends, share these ideas, and let's create a happier world together.
One mindful breath, one grateful moment, one act of self-compassion at a time. Thanks for joining us.